A millionaire catches the maid after coming home early, and what he sees leaves him in shock. Morning settled quietly over the Vale mansion. Soft sunlight filtered through the sheer white curtains, spilling across the weary face of Lucien Vale, a 42-year-old real estate magnate once admired for his brilliance and ambition. But the reflection staring back at him in the mirror was no longer that of a victor, only a lonely father buried beneath the weight of a grief that refused to fade. He straightened his tie for the third time, trying to look composed, though the dark circles under his eyes betrayed sleepless nights. 3 years had passed since Seraphine Vale, the woman he loved, died in a car crash. Since then, Lucien's world had lost its color. He tried to fill the void with work, contracts, and numbers, but nothing could drown out the silence that haunted the vast house. The crash of breaking porcelain jolted him from his thoughts. Lucien closed his eyes, exhaling. He already knew what that meant. Another nanny had reached her limit. Descending the marble staircase, he saw shards of a shattered antique vase scattered across the floor. 3 children, Aiden, Lyra, and Orin, 6 years old, stood in a neat line, feigning innocence, while Beatrice Crow, the nanny who'd lasted barely 2 weeks, trembled with anger. "They threw it to the ground, Mr. Vale!" Beatrice's voice shook as she nearly shouted. Aiden, the eldest, crossed his arms defiantly. "We didn't do it." "Don't lie," Beatrice snapped. "I saw you push it off the table." Lyra burst into tears, the practiced kind she used whenever she wanted attention. Orin, the quietest, hid behind his brother, a mischievous smile flickering on his lips. Lucien watched the scene unfold, his heart sinking with weary resignation. "Beatrice," he said softly, "please calm down. They're just children." "Children? You don't understand," Beatrice said, tears filling her eyes. "They don't listen to anyone. I'm sorry, but I can't do this anymore." 15 minutes later, she was gone, the 12th nanny to quit in 2 years. Lucien sat alone in his study, surrounded by cold walls and quiet air. On his desk rested a framed photo of Seraphine, her gentle smile still warm through the glass. He brushed his fingers across the picture and murmured, voice low, "I've tried everything, Seraphine, but I don't know what to do with them anymore." He called the nanny agency, his tone heavy with exhaustion. On the other end, the woman sighed. "Mr. Vale, to be honest, your children's reputation has made it difficult. Few are willing to take the job now. So what do you suggest I do? Perhaps consider a boarding school or professional therapy." Lucien said nothing. He couldn't. No matter how unruly they were, those 3 were all he had left of Seraphine. He couldn't send them away. He couldn't bear another loss. Outside, the early light struck the cold window panes. The mansion remained beautiful, immaculate, and unbearably hollow. Upstairs, 3 children began another day without a mother, without affection, only chaos and a quiet loneliness that seeped through every corner of the house. Nearly an hour's drive from the Vale mansion, in a small, aging neighborhood, Elara Wynn was cleaning the modest house she shared with her daughter. The walls were cracked and the paint peeling, yet the home was always tidy and warm. On the dining table lay a stack of unpaid bills and a cold lunch she hadn't had time to eat. The morning began with the voice of Isola, her 16-year-old daughter, rushing to get ready for school. "Mom, are you working for rich people again today?" she asked, her tone laced with sarcasm. Elara smiled faintly without turning around. "Yes, sweetheart. The agency assigned me to a new place. They say the house is huge." Isola frowned. "So what if it's huge? Big or small doesn't matter. I just hate the way they look at you like you're invisible." The words made Elara pause. She turned, gently resting a hand on her daughter's shoulder. "My love, every job is worthy of respect as long as you do it with heart. They might look down on me, but I'll never be ashamed of honest work." Isola lowered her gaze, silent. She knew her mother was right, yet a knot still tightened in her chest every time her classmates mentioned the maid's daughter. Before leaving, Elara packed her cleaning kit with practiced precision, a few bottles of detergent, rags, and rubber gloves. She had long grown used to carrying her whole world in a single bag. Closing the door, she stood quietly for a few seconds on the porch, drawing a deep breath, as if summoning courage for the long day ahead. On the way to work, the sounds of buses, chatter, and the scent of coffee mixed with the city's dust, the everyday rhythm of survival. One thought pulsed in her mind. She had to keep going. No matter the fatigue, no matter the struggle, she had to raise her daughter, no matter what it cost. When the bus stopped in front of the Vale mansion, Elara looked up at the towering iron gates. Beyond them stretched a world she would never belong to. Perfectly trimmed gardens, blinding white walls, and windows glinting with the morning sun. The gatekeeper, Edric Shaw, smiled warmly as he opened the gate. "You must be Mrs. Wynn, right? I'm Edric, been working here for 10 years. Welcome to the Vale residence." Elara nodded politely. "It's a pleasure to meet you." Edric leaned closer, lowering his voice. "A word of advice, the 3 kids here can be a handful. Just do your work and try not to get involved in their business." Elara nodded again, though curiosity stirred in her chest. She'd worked in many homes, but no one had ever warned her about difficult children with such wary eyes. As she entered the spacious kitchen, the warm scent of freshly baked bread filled the air. Mrs. Dorothea Finch, the longtime cook, was busy preparing lunch. "You're the new one, aren't you?" the older woman asked with a kind smile. "Yes, I'm Elara." "Watch out for those kids," Mrs. Finch said with a chuckle. "They're wild, but it's not their fault. Lost their mother young, and their fathers buried in work. This house hasn't felt warm in years." Elara smiled softly, her eyes shadowed with understanding. She knew too well what it meant to lose someone you loved. As she began her first day of work, she didn't yet realize that stepping through that door would change her life forever, that within these cold walls she would not only find a job, but also rediscover the meaning of love and family she thought she had lost for good. Footsteps thundered down the upstairs hallway, followed by the sharp crash of something breaking. Mrs. Dorothea Finch sighed. "Again," she muttered. Moments later, 3 children appeared at the top of the stairs. A brown-haired boy with sharp, commanding eyes led the way. Aiden Vale, the eldest of the triplets. Beside him was Lyra, her curls messy and a streak of chocolate across her cheek, and behind them trailed Orin, clutching a worn teddy bear tightly in his arms. Elara Wynn bent to pick up a fallen rag, hiding a faint smile. "Hello there," she greeted softly. Aiden narrowed his eyes, wary. "Who are you? The new nanny?" "No," Elara replied gently. "Just the housekeeper." "Then don't touch our stuff," he said, arms crossed like a miniature adult. Lyra pouted. "Can you sing?" The question caught Elara off guard. "Sing?" "Yeah," the little girl said matter-of-factly. "The other maids used to sing. They were terrible." Mrs. Finch let out a short laugh. Elara said nothing, only smiled faintly and went back to her work. Then, almost without thinking, she began humming, a soft old lullaby she used to sing to Isola when her daughter was small. The kitchen, usually filled with chatter, grew still. Lyra tilted her head, eyes shining. "What song is that?" "It's one my daughter loved when she was little," Elara said. "You have a daughter?" Aiden asked, curiosity slipping through his guarded tone. "I do. She's 16 now. When she was younger, she used to break things too, just like you 3. Orin tugged on his brother's sleeve and whispered something. Aiden listened, then translated with a frown that tried to hide tenderness. "He wants to know if you ever yell at your daughter." Elara paused. Her eyes softened. Yell? She repeated. Only when she forgets that she's loved. The words hung in the air. Aiden blinked, caught off guard. Lyra stared at her shoes, fidgeting with her skirt hem. Orin stayed half hidden behind his brother, yet his gaze never left Elara's face. Mrs. Finch watched quietly and murmured, "It's been a long time since they actually listened to an adult." When Elara finished washing the last dish, the children still hadn't left. They sat on the stools, silent and observant, as if trying to decide whether this woman truly was different. Before leaving, Elara crouched to their level. "My name is Elara," she said softly. "If you ever need something, I'll be around. Cleaning, or maybe singing, but never yelling." Aiden hesitated, then gave a small nod. Lyra smiled shyly. Orin lifted his teddy bear in a quiet wave. No one in the house realized it then, but that day an invisible thread had been tied, linking a woman carrying her own scars to 3 children still searching for the warmth of love. The first few days passed in silence. Elara Wynn moved quietly through her work, cleaning as usual, careful not to disturb the children. She didn't try to make conversation or force warmth. She was simply there, gently, steadily, like a calm presence that never intruded, yet somehow filled the space. And yet the children began to watch her. From the hallway, from behind half-closed doors, Lyra and Orin's curious eyes followed her every move. How she hummed softly while wiping tables, how she carefully picked up broken toys and reassembled the pieces as if afraid they might feel pain. Aiden, meanwhile, pretended not to care, but Elara knew he noticed everything. One morning, as she mopped the upstairs hallway, he deliberately kicked the bucket, sending water splashing across the floor. "You shouldn't leave your things lying around," Aiden said, his tone challenging. Elara didn't scold him. She calmly grabbed another mop, knelt, and began wiping the floor again. "I'll be more careful next time," she said softly, without even looking at him. Aiden waited for a shout, for anger, but none came. His brow furrowed. The provocation hadn't worked. The next day he tried again, hiding her cleaning rags, spilling detergent, even scribbling on the bathroom mirror. Each time, Elara only sighed quietly and cleaned up, never complaining, never raising her voice. By the 5th time, Aiden snapped. "Why don't you yell at me? Don't you see I'm trying to annoy you?" Elara looked up, a gentle smile touching her lips. "Because I know you're not doing it to hurt anyone," she said. "You just want to see how adults will react, right?" He froze. Her words disarmed him completely. She understood him too well, as if she could read the things he didn't know how to say. That afternoon, Lyra tripped while running down the hall, scraping her knee. She cried loudly while Aiden and Orin stood frozen, unsure what to do. Elara came running, not panicked, not angry. "Let's see," she said calmly. "Just a little scratch. I'll clean it and put on a bandage." Lyra held her breath as Elara's warm hands cleaned the wound, her soft humming floating through the air like a lullaby. When she was done, Lyra proudly showed her brothers, smiling through tears. "Look, she gave me a princess bandage!" Aiden and Orin burst out laughing. For the first time, real laughter echoed through the mansion, a sound that hadn't been heard there in years. That evening, as Elara packed up to leave, the 3 children ran down the stairs. "Are you coming back tomorrow?" Aiden asked, his voice hesitant. Elara smiled. "If you want me to, I'll always come back." She didn't realize it yet, but that simple promise marked the beginning of a new journey, one where she would heal 3 wounded hearts with the simplest weapon of all: kindness. After 3 weeks of working at the Vale Mansion, Elara Wynn's quiet presence had begun to change the atmosphere of the house. Laughter, small, spontaneous, and childlike, echoed again through the marble halls, and even Lucien Vale felt that the mansion no longer felt quite as hollow as before. But that fragile peace lasted only until one fateful Monday morning, when Vera Duskwood, the new nanny hired from a prestigious agency, arrived. Lucien met her in the main hall. Vera, around 50, was tall and stern-faced. A crisp white blouse, a black pencil skirt, hair pulled tight into a perfect bun. Everything about her radiated control and chill precision. "Miss Duskwood has impressive credentials," Lucien said, forcing a hopeful smile, as if reading her resume could somehow fix what was broken in his home. Elara, who was polishing the table nearby, glanced up at the newcomer. A flicker of unease crossed her eyes, an instinctive feeling that the fragile warmth of this home was about to be shattered. Vera's lips curved into a thin, icy smile as she addressed the children. "Good morning. From today on, there will be new rules in this house," she said, her voice sharp and measured. Aiden frowned. Lyra clung tightly to Elara's hand. Orin hid behind his sister. Lucien, watching the scene, felt strangely relieved. He believed strictness was what his children needed. "Miss Duskwood will help you become more disciplined," he said, unaware he had just opened the door to a storm. As soon as Lucien left for work, Vera's mask slipped. "First rule," she said coldly. "Breakfast is at 7 sharp. Anyone late, no food. Study begins at 9. No laughter, no running. Undisciplined children need structure." Aiden scowled. "What if we're hungry?" "Then hunger will teach you obedience," Vera replied, without emotion. At lunch, Lyra refused to eat her broccoli. Vera immediately cleared the entire table. "If you won't eat what's good for you, you won't eat at all." Lyra burst into tears, but Vera remained unmoved. When Aiden tried to share his portion with his sister, Vera stopped him. "No, everyone is responsible for their own choices. This is how discipline is learned." That afternoon, Orin struggled with a math problem. Shy by nature, he flinched when Vera snapped, "How stupid can you be? It's basic addition." Tears welled in his eyes. "Stop crying," she barked. "Boys don't cry." From upstairs, Elara heard the choked sobs. Her heart clenched. Mrs. Dorothea Finch shook her head and whispered, "Best not to interfere, dear. You'll lose your job." But the mother in Elara was screaming inside. Days passed, and fear began to seep into every corner of the mansion. Vera enforced a list of rules that turned the house into a cage. No talking during meals. No playing outside until homework is complete. Any mistake earns punishment, standing motionless for hours or being locked in a dark room. One afternoon, Aiden accidentally broke a pencil. Vera's fury ignited. She grabbed him by the arm and dragged him into a room, locking the door. "You'll stay here until you learn to respect your belongings," she hissed. The sound of the turning lock echoed down the hall, followed by Aiden's muffled sobs. Elara stood outside, trembling. She knocked gently. "Aiden, sweetheart, are you okay?" A small, shaky voice came through the door. "Miss Elara, I'm scared of the dark." Tears stung her eyes, but all she could manage was a whisper. "I'm right here, my dear. Don't be afraid. I'm not leaving." 2 hours later, Vera unlocked the door. Aiden emerged pale and silent. That night, Elara heard Lyra crying in her room. When she went in, the girl was shaking. She said, "If I have another nightmare, she'll give me medicine to make me sleep forever." Elara froze. In that moment, she knew the storm had truly begun. Since the night Lyra cried in fear, Elara Wynn had not slept well. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard the children's cries echoing in her mind. She knew that if she stayed silent, something worse would happen. But if she spoke up, she risked losing the only job that supported her and Isola. The next morning, Vera Duskwood entered the kitchen with a displeased look. "Mrs. Wynn," her voice as cold as steel. "I don't want to see you around the children anymore. They need discipline, not your useless songs." Elara stopped what she was doing and looked up, her tone gentle but firm. "I only sing to calm them. Don't you notice they're frightened?" Vera sneered with contempt. "Fear is part of learning. No discipline, no future." Elara said nothing, but a small flame began to burn inside her. The following day, while tidying the sitting room, she overheard Vera on the phone, low-voiced but clear. "Yes, I know cough syrup with codeine will do. Just a small dose and they'll be quiet. No prescription necessary." Elara froze. Her heart pounded. Vera planned to give the children sedatives? All morning she could not concentrate. The children were unnaturally quiet. Aiden no longer mischievous, Lyra silent, Orin clutching his teddy. Each wore the same look: fear and broken trust. When Vera went out to buy medicine, Elara found the 3 children hiding behind the sofa, faces pale with panic. "Miss Elara," Aiden called. "She said she'll give us medicine, so we'll be quiet forever." Lyra sobbed. "She said if we don't behave, she'll give us sleeping medicine so we never wake up," Orin whispered, voice trembling. "Like our mother." Elara felt the room spin. There was no longer any doubt. Vera had crossed every line. When Vera returned with a bag of medicine, Elara stepped forward and blocked the kitchen doorway. "Miss Duskwood, I need to speak with you." "Not now," Vera snapped. "Move aside." "You cannot give the children medicine without a doctor's order." Vera stopped, eyes narrowing like a predator. "Who do you think you are? A maid knows nothing about raising children." "I'm no expert," Elara answered, voice shaking but steady. "But I am a mother. I know when a child is being harmed." Vera laughed, cold and dry. "You're digging your own grave, Wynn. If Mr. Vale learns you meddled, you'll be fired. And then who will feed your child?" Elara looked Vera straight in the eyes. "If I must choose between losing my job and seeing these children harmed, I choose to lose my job." Vera stepped closer, her tone hardening. "You are dismissed. Pack your things and leave this house." Before Elara could reply, a small voice rang out from behind her. "No." All 3 children stood there, faces streaked with tears. Aiden moved forward and planted himself between Elara and Vera. "She didn't do anything wrong. You're the bad one," he said, awkward and fierce. Lyra wailed, "You locked Aiden. You threatened to make us take medicine to die." Orin, though shaking, shouted, "We want Miss Elara to stay." Vera faltered, thrown off balance. Elara, hands trembling, held her ground. For the first time in her life, she was no longer a silent housekeeper. She was a mother protecting children who were not hers. What she did not know was that Lucien Vale, the always busy father, was driving home early, and was about to witness everything. The front door opened softly. Lucien Vale stepped inside, still holding his briefcase. He had only meant to stop by to grab a few documents. He hadn't expected to hear shouting echoing from the kitchen. Vera Duskwood's shrill voice cut through the air, trembling with rage. "Useless woman! Who do you think you are to meddle in my affairs?" Then came the sound of children crying, Lyra's sobs piercing the air. "Don't fire Miss Elara. She's kind." Lucien froze. His footsteps quickened, the sharp taps of his shoes echoing across the marble floor. When he reached the kitchen doorway, the sight before him made his blood run cold. Vera stood in the middle of the room, face twisted with fury, a bag of medicine clenched in her hand. In front of her, the 3 children huddled together, eyes red and swollen, while Elara Wynn stood protectively before them, arms spread wide. "Mrs. Wynn," Vera hissed, "get out of here this instant!" "No," Elara's voice trembled, but her gaze was steady. "You will not hurt them." Lucien set his briefcase down on the counter, his tone low and heavy. "What's going on here?" Both women fell silent. The children immediately ran toward him, clinging to his legs. Aiden spoke first, his breath coming fast. "She locked me in a dark room, Dad. She said she'd make us drink medicine to die." Lyra choked between sobs. "She said if we're bad, she'll make us disappear, like Mom." Lucien's face drained of color. He turned toward Vera, voice tight. "Is this true?" Vera gripped the bag tighter, trying to stay composed. "Sir, the children are lying. I was only trying to keep them quiet. They need discipline, not indulgence." "And you think sedating them is the best way to teach that?" Elara interrupted, eyes blazing. Vera snapped around. "You're lying!" But Lucien was no longer listening. He stepped forward and snatched the bag from her hand. Inside were several bottles of cough syrup labeled codeine, exactly as Elara had said. He looked down at the labels, then back up, his voice turning to ice. "I trusted you, and this is how you treat my children?" Vera stammered. "I only wanted to help." "Help?" Lucien cut her off, fury breaking through his restraint. "By teaching them fear?" Mrs. Dorothea Finch, having heard the commotion, hurried in and sighed. "I told you, Mr. Vale, she wasn't good news." Lucien turned to Elara, his expression softening. "Thank you. If you hadn't spoken up today—" He paused, glancing at his trembling children. "I don't want to imagine what could have happened." Elara bowed her head slightly, voice quiet but sincere. "I only did what any mother would do." Vera's voice cracked into a shriek. "You'll hear from my lawyer. I'll sue you for slander." Lucien met her glare without flinching. "You can do whatever you wish, after you leave my house, right now." Mrs. Finch escorted Vera out as the three children clung to Elara, crying with relief. Lucien sat down, his gaze distant, the late afternoon light spilling across the room. "Mrs. Wynn," he said quietly, "I owe you an apology. I was blind to think discipline could replace love." Elara smiled softly, tired but warm. "You weren't wrong, sir. It's just that sometimes children need to be loved before they can learn to listen." Lucien nodded, emotion tightening his throat. As the golden light filtered through the glass, he realized what he had forgotten all this time. His children didn't need another teacher. They needed someone who truly understood and loved them. The next morning, the first rays of sunlight slipped through the kitchen window. After the storm, the Vale mansion was strangely quiet. No shouting, no sobbing, only the sound of birds outside and the faint scent of coffee drifting through the air. Elara Wynn arrived early as usual, though something in her heart felt different. After everything that had happened, she wasn't sure if she still had a place in this house. Lucien Vale entered moments later, shirt half-buttoned, looking weary but softer than usual. He paused in the doorway, watching Elara prepare coffee, her small, unassuming frame radiating a calm that silenced even his thoughts for a moment. "Mrs. Wynn," he began quietly. Elara turned, startled. "Yes, Mr. Vale?" he exhaled, setting his cup down on the counter. "I owe you both gratitude and an apology." Elara hesitated. "You don't have to—" "I do," Lucien interrupted. "If not for you, I don't know what would have happened to my children. I thought being a good father meant providing for them, but I let them live in fear." Elara met his eyes gently. "You only did what any grieving father would do. When we lose the one we love, sometimes we lose ourselves too." Lucien was silent for a long time before speaking again. "Elara, I reviewed the footage from the security cameras. I saw you singing to Lyra when she had nightmares. I saw you bandaging Aiden's knee and soothing Orin to sleep. I saw everything." His voice wavered slightly. "I don't just owe you an apology. I owe you my trust." Elara lowered her head humbly. "Thank you, sir, but I only did what any mother would do." Lucien smiled, a rare, genuine smile. "You're not just the housekeeper, Elara. You brought life back into this home. And if you're willing, I'd like you to stay, not as staff, but as the children's primary caregiver." Elara froze. "You mean as their nanny?" "Yes," he nodded. "I'll handle all expenses. Your salary will be 10 times what it is now. But more importantly, I want you to know you have my full trust to make whatever decisions you think are best for them." Elara fell silent. In her mind, she saw Isola, her 16-year-old daughter, waiting for her at home. "Mr. Vale," she said softly, "I need to ask my daughter first. She's my whole world, and I don't want her to feel abandoned." Lucien nodded, his gaze sincere. "Of course, but please tell her this. Because of you, my children are smiling again. And so am I." In that moment, something quiet yet warm passed between them, something that didn't need to be spoken, but felt as clear as the morning light. Mrs. Dorothea Finch entered, noticing the two sitting across from each other, and smiled knowingly. "I've never seen this house so peaceful, Mr. Vale," she said, then turned to Elara. "You truly are a blessing to these children." Lucien looked at Elara and nodded softly. "Yes," he said, "a blessing to all of us." That evening, when Elara Wynn returned to her small apartment on the outskirts of town, she found Isola sitting at her desk under the dim glow of a yellow lamp. The girl's tired face was framed by loose strands of hair, and on the table lay open notebooks, scribbled equations mixed with quiet lines of poetry. "You're still awake?" Elara asked softly, setting her bag down. "I'm studying," Isola replied calmly. "There's a test tomorrow." Elara smiled faintly and poured herself a glass of water. She wanted to tell her daughter about Lucien Vale, about his offer, but she hesitated. How could she explain that she might soon be working full-time at another family's mansion, caring for 3 children who weren't her own? "My love," Elara began carefully, "Mr. Vale offered me a long-term position today. Not cleaning anymore. He wants me to take care of his children. It's a good job. The salary is 10 times what I earn now." Isola set her pen down. "That means you'll be there all day?" "Yes," Elara admitted, "but I'll be home in the evenings, and I'll have weekends off, so we'll still have time together." The girl was silent for a moment before whispering, "You'll spend more time with them than with me." The words pierced Elara's heart. "Isola, no," she said softly. "I'm doing this for you, for your future. With that money, you can go to university and never have to worry." Isola gave a bitter smile. "What's the point of college if you're not there with me?" The room fell quiet. Elara moved closer and sat beside her daughter. "You know," she said gently, "those children, they remind me of you when you were little. They lost their mother young, and no one truly understands them. When I look at them, I see the same brave girl who used to hide her tears." Isola turned, her eyes glistening. "Do you love them more than me?" Elara shook her head and clasped her daughter's hands. "No, darling. I love them with a mother's compassion, but I love you with my whole heart. Those two kinds of love don't compete. They only make my heart bigger." After a pause, Isola rested her head on her mother's shoulder and whispered, "I'm just afraid of losing you, like they lost theirs." Elara held her tight, tears sliding down her cheeks. "You'll never lose me, Isola. No matter where I am, I'll always belong to you." The next morning, over breakfast, Isola spoke first. "Mom, if that job makes you happy, I think you should take it, but on one condition." Elara smiled through her tears. "What condition?" "I want to meet those kids. If they really need you the way you say, I want to understand why." Elara looked at her daughter, who was beginning to learn that love doesn't divide, it multiplies. She nodded, smiling with deep emotion. "I promise. You'll meet them, and then you'll understand why I chose to stay." Outside the window, the morning sun rose over the quiet street. A new beginning awaited them both, a mother about to change her life, and a daughter about to learn that true love means sharing your heart without losing any part of it. Saturday afternoon arrived with a clear sky and golden sunlight spilling over the tree-lined road that led to the Vale mansion. Elara Wynn held Isola's hand as they walked through the gate. She felt her daughter's fingers tremble slightly, not from fear, but from a mix of worry and curiosity. "Are you sure?" Elara asked softly. Isola nodded, though her eyes stayed fixed on the grand house ahead. "I just want to know why you chose to be here." The door opened, and Mrs. Dorothea Finch greeted them with her usual warm smile. "Mrs. Wynn, and this must be the daughter you always talk about?" Isola smiled politely. "Nice to meet you." From the living room came the sound of small giggles. 3 faces peeked out from behind the sofa: Aiden, Lyra, and Orin. They hesitated for a moment before Lyra rushed forward. "Are you really Miss Elara's daughter?" she asked, eyes wide. Isola laughed. "Yes, she's my mom." Lyra frowned thoughtfully. "But she's kind of our mom, too. Well, the best mom ever." Elara chuckled, and Isola shook her head, smiling. "Then I guess that makes us both lucky." Aiden, ever the cautious one, stepped closer, eyeing Isola with curiosity. "Are you mad at us for stealing Miss Elara from you?" The question caught Isola off guard. She looked into his worried eyes and saw something she recognized, a fear she herself once felt. She crouched down, speaking softly. "No, my mom doesn't belong to anyone. She just has a heart big enough to love everyone." Aiden studied her for a moment before smiling, his first genuine smile. "Just like us, then." Orin, the quietest, approached shyly with a crayon drawing clutched in his hands. In it were 5 figures, 3 children, Elara, and a girl with long hair. "I made this for you," he said softly. "You're our sister in the picture." Isola took the drawing, eyes glistening. "Thank you. It's beautiful." The afternoon drifted by peacefully. They sat in the garden, playing guessing games, drawing, and telling stories. For the first time in months, Isola laughed freely, the pure, unguarded laugh Elara thought she'd lost forever. As the sun began to set, Lucien Vale appeared on the porch. He paused, watching the scene before him. 4 children laughing around the table, and Elara sitting among them, the golden light of dusk resting gently on her hair. He whispered, almost to himself, This is what a real family looks like." Isola looked up and noticed him. "Hi," she said shyly. "I'm Isola." Lucien smiled. "The daughter your mother always talks about. Thank you for sharing her with us." Isola blushed and replied quietly, "Thank you for making her happy." In that moment, every boundary between rich and poor, employer and employee, this family and that one, faded away. All that remained was a single home, where once lonely hearts had finally found one another.